Hello, everyone, and welcome. Michigan, or at least the northern part of lower Michigan, well, all of southern lower Michigan, too, is definitely in full-on melt time, which signals the new beginning of spring. And that also means that 2025, this is not a 2025, is right around the corner in terms of order openings opening up and vehicles going into production. And many of you guys, I've noticed a lot of viewers lately, are specifically interested in ordering, or they're in the purchasing process of a 2025 Super Duty or potentially a leftover 24. So we do try and cover, I've made several different videos talking about the different features of this truck and why it may be relevant to your usage. My truck I use for everything from empty to light work to a little bit bigger work to big work. And maybe I'll put a quick collage so you can see down there. I always buy four-wheel drive trucks because my use always ends up, I use four-wheel drive all the time. So that is something that means a lot to me. I also am not really a big chrome fan, so you're going to see that a lot of my vehicles have always had the minimum amount of chrome possible, and that's one reason why I love the STX package. In this video, we're doing a little bit of a hybrid between me showing you my truck and also showing pictures and doing a voiceover. And what I want to cover is what Super Duty model missing points there are from Ford, what opportunities they have to make the Super Duty better for the end user. And maybe some of you guys already have one of these trucks or are truck buyers in general. You guys may have find that I'm on point with something, or maybe you might disagree. Feel free to put down in the comment section what you think about my thoughts and conclusions. I wanted to share a little bit of my truck, the way I have it set up, which is I added Tremor steps and I added 285/65 R20 AT4Ws, and this setup works amazing for me. It is an FX4 package truck, so it has the factory locker, which we're going to talk about. That is an incredible option. I didn't think about, realize, made the mistake, or better yet, this was sort of an impulse buy for me, okay? And it was a good impulse buy. The only downside is that my truck doesn't have dual batteries and dual alternator, which means per Ford's requirements, it needs to have dual batteries in order to put the aftermarket winch on. We're going to talk about that option. We're also going to talk about fuel tank size, bed layout, and things like that. So this is going to be a little bit of a hybrid video, and I wanted to make a good introduction. Like I said, if I miss anything that you guys are noticing in your own usages, I am not affiliated with Ford at all, but I do hope that Ford is doing their own due diligence of looking at actual buyers, owners of their trucks, and seeing where they may have missed. And I'm hoping that this video reaches the right person, and of course with more engagement, with more support from you guys, these kind of recommendations directly to Ford may actually turn out to be implemented in the future, which I think will benefit both buyers like me and potentially buyers like you. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and we are going to get started right now. This is really a great time to be a Super Duty truck buyer. They have an excellent two gas engines that both are extremely powerful, reliable, and do the job very well. There are two diesel power levels, and there's everything from basic to rather expensive and highly featured rolling luxury living rooms that a buyer can select from. We're going to talk about the fine details of a couple missed opportunities that I think Ford could fill in. So I really think the opportunity really lies in the XL versus XLT and what falls in the middle of those two trucks. The XL is the most basic truck, but really when you look at it, it's more about the most work-oriented, utilitarian-oriented truck. And for a lot of Americans, that is exactly what they're doing. We're working with our trucks. We're using our trucks in potentially a rough environment where we really can't constitute spending an extra $20,000, $30,000 on prettiness when we're going to be putting our trucks in challenging positions in the first place. So I think that this area of the lower end of the truck market deals with a lot of hardworking Americans, and I really think that Ford's got that the Lariat and the Ultimate Package stuff. The King Ranch has always had those really interesting that brown seat setup. If you're into that, that's great. And the two-tone that King Ranches always looks good. And the Platinum definitely covers that higher-end buyer that probably doesn't constitute a lot of the truck market. I really think they need to focus a little bit more on the XLT and XL area, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So the STX was that step up that gave you the higher end truck look without the higher end truck price. And I love the way these new STXs look. The grille brings me back to the early 2000s Fords, which is really where I started. Their colors look really good with that whole front end. It gives the truck a really nice look, and you can get the STX in the long bed. But where the problem happens here is the lack of an STX option in the regular cab, in the extended cab trucks, and the lack of a dually option. The F450, for one, my F450, I would have ordered it in an STX if it was available because I think it looks absolutely unbelievably good. The dually 350 also does not come as an STX, see, it's a little bit of a tongue twister, option. And again, a lot of buyers buying those dual rear wheel trucks don't just want to settle for either, in my opinion, somewhat ugly front end chrome look of the XLT. And some of them may want to have a little bit more color going on in the front than the basic black bumper and the black grille and the relatively basic headlight look. Now, I would personally would prefer the basic headlight look, but that's not about me in comparison to like the Platinum or the King Ranch. That level of truck just doesn't look good to me, but that's not what it's all about. What it is all about is why isn't the STX, it wouldn't cost them anything different. They're already producing all this stuff. The whole truck is exactly the same, whether it's a dually or whether it's a single wheel. And also the regular cab STX would look absolutely ridiculous. And I think a lot more people would look at buying a regular cab if they could get an STX, because that kind of fits the regular cab sporty persona. So I think that's a big miss. Also, some important things to consider. Race red looks really good in the STX trim. So does the antimatter blue. And do not sleep on the carbonized gray. That color looks really good on a lot of different trim levels. I just saw a Lariat standard output Power Stroke at a dealer when I stopped in there just to stare at a really good-looking Bronco. That carbonized gray is a really good-looking color. So we're going to go back to picking on dualies for just a minute. In the XL, you can't get a 350 7.3 dually XL without having an STX. And because dualies you can't get an STX, you're stuck getting the 6.8. Now, that's something I don't really understand. When the 6.8 was first announced, I could totally see that being a commercial fleet engine. I'm sure it's a really good engine. I'm sure it does the job. But your average consumer, why wouldn't you want to have the most power, the most torque, the most performance? I can't personally understand why they're gearing the 6.8 toward a normal consumer. Now, I will say someone's interjection is going to be, why would a normal consumer buy a XL dually gasser and not be a fleet? Well, I'm going to point out something super quickly to you guys, and it's going to piggyback off of what I'm going to say next. A lot of people are towing recreational vehicles, whether they be large campers, or whether they be large enclosed trailers these days with, whether it be snowmobiling, side-by-siding, whatever, where having the stability of a dually is definitely on their radar. But then again, they want to have the off-road capability that comes with having, we're going to talk about this, a rear locker and potentially a front locker. And also larger tires, better tread, that kind of thing. There's a whole subset of people who are buying dualies to go do recreational activities. And those people who want to get somewhere towing their, say, recreational trailer, and then they want to go do recreational activities. They don't want to have a truck that is a pavement princess only. And I know that to be the case because Carly's making lift kits and off-road performance systems for those vehicles. They're commonly set up as chase rigs for desert racing and rock buggy related stuff. And they're commonly modified with better traction tires, mud tires or all-terrain tires, for your average consumer that is just using them as a tow vehicle or even a somewhat daily driver. So just because it's a dually and just because it's an XL doesn't mean that it always has to be a fleet truck. And that's why I don't understand why I can't get, and I could totally see myself having this, is a 7.3 430 gear rear locker, 4-door long bed dually, to use as a recreational tow rig, but also that isn't lame off-road. I could see that for myself totally. I think a lot of you guys, if you're setting up a welding truck or a service truck, those potentially vocational environments are not smooth pavement. They're a lot of times off-road, in sand, in mud, in rocks, in forests, logging related, that kind of thing. That truck is literally just for you kind of guys. And the fact that we're not getting the 7.3, the most power, and we're going to talk about some other off-road accoutrements in that setup, I think is a huge miss. I think this is a fantastic segue into talking about limited slip versus a locking rear differential. Limited slip works okay on wet pavement on the road. As long as you're not in icy conditions, it will act as an open diff as soon as you get into a true ice situation or a situation where one tire has a lot more traction than the other tire. By definition, a limited slip differential offers limited slip between the tires. But when you have zero traction on one side and a whole bunch of traction on the other, I promise you the tire with no traction will be spinning, even if you have a limited slip differential. The only way to positively transfer the power from the side that has no traction, like if you put it on rollers, to the other side, is with a locker. And we can talk about another video too. Helical gear limited slips are exactly the same way. They require a equal or similar amount of traction on both tires to send power in both directions. They allow limited slip, just like a clutch type limited slip differential. They are not ideal for off-road environments, and it's kind of unfortunate that the Torsen and the True Track has been kind of pushed down the off-road community because it really doesn't work very well. I've owned several different vehicles that have a helical gear limited slip differential, including a Detroit True Track by name. And I can promise you that is the case. They do not work very well when you lift a tire. Well, they don't work at all when you lift a tire. And if one tire is on a extremely low traction surface versus an extremely high traction surface on the other side, it will spin the low traction surface tire. Simply by adding a locker, the truck will likely go forward in two-wheel drive with it locked in most conditions where you're spinning one tire with an open diff or a limited slip differential, and that includes a helical gear limited slip differential like a Torsen or a True Track. Where I think this is a miss, the dually has a unique axle to it, the M300. At this point, they're no longer Dana 80s, and that's long by the wayside. They're called Dana M300s, and obviously they are extremely strong. However, it is not very difficult to take a known design, and I'm not asking for it to put a Detroit locker in it. However, I'd like to have a Detroit locker. But the E-locker has been a relatively standard option that comes with all FX4 package trucks and can be optioned without FX4, as far as I know, since 2011. A lot of Super Duties, single-wheel Super Duties, have been sold with a factory E-locker without any problems and with largely extremely happy consumers, and I don't know of them being an unreliable locker application. So, all it takes to put a locker into an axle is the bearing surface needs to be the same diameter to where the carrier goes into the housing. The spline size and the axle diameter, which is generally dictated by the spline count, as long as it doesn't have goofy side splines like a Rockwell or something like that. That spline count needs to be right, and the overall physical dimensions of the carrier of the E-locker needs to both be able to accept the ring gear in the right position, left and right, in the axle, and it needs to be the overall width of where the two bearings that hold in the carrier into the axle. All it needs to do is have all of those parameters the same, and you just take a known design of locker setup, and you ensure that it has those correct dimensions. That is exactly what happens with all of the axles that accept or have aftermarket E-locker or air locker options. That's all they've simply done is take a standard design and make it fit all these different designs of axles. There's nothing stopping them from making an E-locker setup for the M300 at all. And if they did that, you would be able to have one in the 450 as well. And I think that that's a huge miss too. When you have a truck specifically made for towing, in theory, most of the time, or a lot of the time, it's going to have a lot of weight on the rear axle. If you have an open diff or a limited slip differential, you're towing a trailer, and your rear end, well, by definition, you're only going to spin one. When you get into a limited traction situation, your truck is going to be a lame duck because most of the weight is on the rear end. That one tire that isn't spinning becomes an anchor, and it holds your truck in position and makes you get stuck. Simply by turning that tire is the difference between being stuck and not being stuck. So I think a huge miss, and this has been going on forever. Well, I don't know of anyone who has offered a factory E-locker for a dually ever. The Power Wagon kind of pioneered the HC truck with factory lockers. That's obviously huge and awesome. And Ford jumped on it in 2011 and said, this is the way forward. It took Dodge a long time with the Rebel to get to that point, and GM finally with the AT4 has a rear e-locker option as far as I know. It took them a long time, those other guys a long time to get there. And Ford jumped on in 2011, which I think is great, but only on single-wheel trucks. Dualies, like I've said, are commonly used in vocational activities as rig support trucks for both off-roading and by rig. I also mean semi-trucks, logging trucks, that kind of thing. They have big, heavy service beds put on, so the rear of the truck is heavily loaded. When you have a heavily loaded back of the truck and you don't have a locker, you're going to be in big, big, big trouble. So I think that's a huge miss, and Ford should be looking at that because it wouldn't be very hard for them to design an e-locker that would work for the application. And e-lockers are commonly incredibly strong, and they are not a weak link in the driveline setup. And like I said, this is being commonly implemented in single-wheel trucks, 250, 350, short bed, long bed, commonly implemented with the diesel, with high output diesel. So it's clearly there. The e-locker in the smaller axle is passing durability with the HO Power Stroke in front of it. So there's no good reason why it can't end up in the other trucks other than the upfront cost of designing this solution to work. So those of you wanting to have a 6-seat, well, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a 6-seat. The thing is that Ford only gives you 2 cup holders with a 6-seat, whereas like Ram always had 3 cup holders with a 6-seat, and that makes a little bit of a difference. I, for one, and this is a small gripe, I'm going to be honest with you guys, but I like to order a coffee and a water. If I'm going to get a coffee or whatever, I usually get a water with it. And so I'm taking up 2 cup holders, and then my better half doesn't get a cup holder, so then I put one either between my legs or holding my hands or whatever. It just becomes kind of a waste of time. So obviously with the center console, if you want to have a center console, you obviously get the huge amount of storage. That's a really good thing. But if you do want to opt for 6 seats, and that's not that it's a lesser truck, it's that you want to have 6 seats, which, is perfectly reasonable, and I, for one, like having 6 seats. But then I only get 2 cup holders, and they're kind of put in there, as you can see in that picture, awkwardly and weird. They just shifted them over to the one side and went ahead and put, the third one in there. My one theory, though, is the reason that they've done that is they've put the seatbelt retractor into that area, and I'm wondering if the reason why it's biased over is the seatbelt retractor. I would say that maybe we find a better place to put the seatbelt retractor, or we just bias the cup holders so we don't interfere with the seatbelt retractor. But minor gripe, but I want to share it because those of us who spend a lot of time in our trucks and probably drink liquids, we kind of want to have good cup holders. And by good cup holders, I mean more cup holders. So you can option a 12,000-pound Ford Performance winch on any of their trucks, including the 350 dually, excluding the F450, as long as the 350 dually does not have 410 gears. Now, you might ask, why the heck does that matter? The reason is because the actual reason you can't have the winch on a 450 is because in the place that the winch goes, there's an auxiliary transmission cooler sitting there. And same with the 410 axle. That's the heavy towing version of the F350. That's going to give you as much or more towing as the F450 if you option a 350 that way. It has a auxiliary transmission cooler sitting in that space. So that is obviously, I think, a little bit of a miss. I think we could put that transmission cooler somewhere else because I think somebody with a big heavy truck hooking to a trailer could definitely appreciate having a winch on their truck. And that includes me ordering my F450, realizing I couldn't order it with the winch, finding out why, and scratching my head and saying, that's a big miss. Now, someone's going to say, why the heck do you want to have a winch on a heavy-duty towing truck? Well, sometimes, for some people don't ever venture off a paved road or a hard-packed driveway, but for some of us, we're towing things into places that maybe aren't so hospitable. The other thing is winches are incredibly handy regardless. I've loaded trailers, or I've loaded vehicles onto dead vehicles onto trailers with winches. I've unloaded them drug them off the trailer using a winch. I've drug rear axles out from underneath trucks to replace them because I didn't have a tractor handy. And let me tell you, a full float axle underneath the truck and you got to drag it on the ground, across the ground on gravel or something where you don't have a way to use casters, put it on appliance dolly or whatever and roll it around. being able to drag it out with a winch makes a big difference. My dad got T-boned in my Focus, and I pulled the whole side of the car back out using the winch so that we could drive the car again. So I've used the winch for I've used winches on trucks for a multitude of different reasons, and let me tell you, I've never not regretted, or I've always regretted not having a winch, and I've never regretted having a winch. So I think this is a good move on Ford's part to offer that hidden winch. I love the hidden winch on a heavy-duty off-road truck. By that, I mean if you're pulling winch cable to make you keep going down a trail, and you're going to keep on going when you screw up, I think having the winch out where you can get to it is a more important thing than having it tucked up. But for those of us using a daily driver and potentially using a winch once in a while, having that winch tucked in, out of the elements, out of the way, isn't going to get damaged by hitting a deer, a car accident, hopefully a lighter car accident. It's still protected from that. It's protected from rain and weather and slush and whatever. That hidden winch is a really good idea, and I think it needs to be available in everything. Because let me tell you, a dually is even more likely to need to pull winch cable in adverse conditions than a single wheel. And it probably has an even bigger trailer hooked on behind it, so it's going to be a huge asset to have that winch on your truck. Keep in mind when you're ordering the winch direct from Ford when you build your truck, or if that truck is already built with a winch, you're getting the dual batteries and dual alternator in the first pass. You can also find that Ford kit for like $2,900. That's on Summit. I've seen some for around low threes. In other places in direct from Ford, it's going to be a little bit more than getting it from another source. And you could have it installed at your dealership. However, the dealer is going to make you put in that dual battery group in as well. So that's going to up your installation price. If you get it from the start from Ford, it's going to save you some money for sure. And you're ending up, it sounds like a big option, $4,000 for a winch. What the heck? The thing is that you're getting dual batteries and dual alternators. Let me give you a little bit of experience here. Those of you who are doing weekend warrior stuff, maybe, like I said, working with your winch, pulling a vehicle up a trailer, getting your truck unstuck once in a while, whatever, you're going to be fine with just one battery, a single alternator, and you're going to respect the duty cycle of the winch and of the battery and not get too out of control with your winching times and whatnot, because you're going to know it because your winch is going to start to slow down. I'll tell you right now, it will. If you are getting a truck that you're going to wheel and you're going to keep on pushing, like I talked about before, past the point of returning home with the winch, you definitely want to have dual batteries for sure and a big alternator. And what Ford's doing is saying, hey, we're going to give you dual alternators and dual batteries so you really can winch the heck out of this. That's kind of a Ford thing. When they do something, it's one of the reasons I like Ford trucks. They are tested extremely hard, and they're giving you a final product that is going to do what they say it does for the life of the truck. So you're paying a lot of money up front for the winch. You're getting a strong winch, and Ford, as far as I know, has warned Spectrum. It's like a 15 or 16,000 pound winch that they're calling a 12K winch. And if you're using this winch with a trailer on the back of the truck, you're going to need to have all of that. And it's a good thing that they're putting in a stout winch so that you don't overheat a smaller winch with the weight of these trucks, plus the weight of a trailer potentially. So you can opt to pay about $9,000 to get the blacked out appearance package on the Tremor, and it looks spectacular. Or you could not pay that and have the chrome and whatever, if that's what you're into. Ford has you covered too, and this can be the case for the Lariat and up to the more basic package. You can pay the money to have the blacked out package. That's what it looks like, blacked out, and oh boy, does it look great. And with the other colors, it looks really, really good too. Here's an example of a black appearance package Tremor. When I first saw this truck, this was a fella that I met at a buddy's wedding, and we became fast friends with common interest and whatnot. When I first saw his truck, I was drooling. This in person is a good-looking truck. Tremors are incredible for those, and Weekend Warriors is a great way of saying these trucks are for you. They are factory equipped to get you out into the woods and do some pretty decent off-roading, absolutely and for sure, and they look dynamite doing it. Dynamite daily driver, dynamite off-road. My recommendation to everyone, if you're considering a Tremor, is, first off, if you're planning on doing a wheel swap, a tire swap, doing suspension, and by that I mean a lift kit and whatever, you're kind of taking off everything the truck already came with. So besides the appearance of the body and the Tremor decal and the winch, which all of those things you can have without buying a Tremor, you're kind of taking all that stuff off of the truck. Now, I do understand that you get a little bit better underbody skid plate action going on down there, which absolutely matters and makes a difference. But if you're going to go ahead and change everything, I'd caution you on saving the money that you're spending on to get the Tremor and go ahead and take a truck that isn't a Tremor with a factory rear locker and go ahead and do those things. If you're someone who's looking for the ultimate of off-road performance and you're buying a 23 plus, so if you're ordering a 25, this is going to matter to you a lot. You can't currently put an e-locker or a locker or any kind of aftermarket traction device in the front axle of your truck. They are all changed M235s. They are a unique axle. So unless you want to swap in a Dana Super 60 from 22 and back and then modify that into your truck, you are either stuck with an open diff on the other truck. So if you don't want to get the best reason to get a Tremor right now is to get that Torsen front differential. Now, I will say if you have a decent situation of traction, the Torsen is going to work in your favor. If you're lifting a front tire, or if one tire is on ice, the other tire is on ground, or if one tire is on gravel, the other tire is in a mud hole or something like that, that differential isn't going to help you get out of the situation. You're going to be just as stuck as somebody who has an open differential. But with careful off-roading, careful wheel placement, you can take that front differential and you can use it to your advantage in most situations off-road. So if you're trying to get a truck with just that little bit more off-road capability and the factory stance of the Tremor, which is, I think it's 1.5 inches taller than the normal truck, it is a very good package for you. 18s are offering a wide selection of tires with a good look, and I believe they have a little bit more offset, give you a little bit more room from the radius arm. In general, it's a really good looking package, but we're going to have a complaint here in just a second. And here's the complaint. This is a Weekend Warriors truck. This is a great truck to tow a fifth wheel with, a conventional trailer, a snowmobile trailer, your off-road trailer full of quads or a buggy or a built Jeep or whatever. And when you get to wherever you're going, you're going to have a truck that can go and recover your Jeep if your Jeep breaks down or whatever. Your side-by-side breaks, you can go recover it with your truck. You're going to have a highly capable truck. It is not a power wagon competitor because it doesn't have the front locker or a disconnecting front sway bar. So my concern with Ford is you put together this relatively amazing package for the Weekend Warrior, except you can't get it in a long bed. I am a short bed buyer, so if I'm saying this, then I think Ford should definitely listen. I have always been a short bed buyer. I only own one long bed. 2 long beds, 12 valves a long bed, but I don't hardly drive that truck, so people with a fifth wheel and who want to have an extended range fuel tank in the bed, or they want to bring a side-by-side in the back, or they want to have a sled deck, things of that nature. And obviously you can get a short bed sled deck, but commonly sled decks and the flexibility of being able to put a side-by-side in the back of the truck too. This truck absolutely 100% for sure should be offered in a long wheelbase option. There's no reason that any of these combinations or any of these options that come with the Tremor shouldn't be offered also on a long bed. And I think that would very much well round this truck. You can get the 7.3 in it. You can get a standard output 6.7 or a 6.7 HO. You kind of get all of the bases covered here. And to have a long bed too, and let me remind you one thing, and we're going to talk about fuel tanks here in a second. With a long bed, you automatically get a little bit higher capacity fuel tank. So that, for a lot of people, sways them to buy a long bed in the first place. So for some buyers considering this truck, they may stop considering a Tremor simply because they can't buy it in a long bed, both for their slider hitch, fuel tank capacity, bedroom for putting quads, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, snowmobiles on a sled deck. This is a Weekend Warriors truck, and Ford make it a long bed because you're going to attack the market with what is already a great truck and give it that extra flexibility. Just like attacking the market with an STX dually, and just like attacking the market with a dually e-locker from the factory, this is your opportunity to attack the market with what is already a great truck and make it a little bit more flexible for a wider range of buyers, and I guarantee you people will be picking up on that. All right, we're going to keep Ryan's truck in the foreground here for this last portion of talking about gas tanks. We need bigger gas tanks to short bed trucks. 7.3s get good fuel range and good fuel economy, but you can never beat having more fuel tank. My Excursion is a 44-gallon tank, and let me tell you, it's one of the things I love about that truck the most. 36 is what you got, or 34, excuse me, in a short bed. We need to be up in the 45, 50-gallon territory on short beds. Aftermarket companies offer it. Here's the reason why they're not offering it. Number one, anything you bring in your vehicle is taking away from payload. Payload is a highly competitive market. for especially this segment of trucks and specifically the 250. Payload is a super competitive market because 250s lack on payload a little bit. So if you go to have an extra 200 pounds of fuel in the truck, it's going to be a bad day. So, or at least for the payload. Now, a lot of people are going to prefer to have that. Make it an option. It's super duper simple. Make it a check mark. Give the short beds a good round number, 45-gallon fuel tank, and give the long beds 55, 65-gallon fuel tanks. They're going to fit. There's aftermarket companies that are offering them. The other reason that OEMs do not offer big fuel tanks on gas trucks, or they try to not to, or they've been reluctantly giving you more fuel, is, first of all, our demand for more range is driving them to give us more fuel finally. But the problem is that in a major accident, a fuel-fed fire is obviously going to decrease the life expectancy of the people in the vehicles. The more fuel you have, the wider spread that fire is, the harder it is to put out, and the quicker the vehicle is going to get enveloped, and the quicker other vehicles that are in the accident or stopped are going to get enveloped too. And it makes it harder for emergency personnel to get to you. The more fuel you have on board, now, granted, the likelihood of getting in an accident with a full tank of fuel is a lot lower. But if you have a 55-gallon tank, or if you have a 50-gallon tank, let's say, half of 50 gallons is 25 gallons. Let's just say on average, a vehicle gets in an accident with about half fuel. Well, 25 gallons is a whole lot more fuel than half of 34. So that is a real concern that the OEMs are dealing with. They get sued after big fuel-fed fires, and they've learned that having too much fuel on board in a gas vehicle and in a pedestrian-owned, a personal vehicle, can be a recipe for disaster. There are laws on how big of fuel you can carry along, like in a commercial truck, and before you get to considered hazmat, there's things to work. And obviously, this amount of fuel wouldn't be considered hazmat, but there's a reason why there's a limitation on fuel, and a lot of it has to do with payload, and a lot of it has to do with the fuel-fed fire that happens when you get in an accident. So keep that in mind. But I think everyone who is first of all, I've never crashed a vehicle other than deer running into me, and I've never been in a fuel-fed fire. I have a friend who was in a very serious fuel-fed fire in I think it was an express van, and he got very hurt. So it's a very serious thing. So keep that in mind. But we definitely, on average, obviously, is more likely you're going to not get in a car accident than you are, or than you will, and it's a lot more likely that your fuel won't catch on fire in a car accident than it will. But there's a concern of that happening, and it becomes a danger for everybody else, including the occupants. So keep that in mind. That's kind of the reason. But Ford, give us bigger fuel tanks. Find a way to do it. Find a way to put some better skid plating on them so we can maybe make them out of thicker plastic. But here's the thing. The more skid plating you put on, the more plastic you put in the tank, the more likely you're going to have degradation of payload capacity, which is a lot of reason why people buy trucks. Keep that in mind, everybody. So the most common, and this is the final thing, so thank you everybody for sticking around. This is the most common upgrade people make to their trucks is tires. And eventually they wear out their tires, so by nature they end up having to decide on a new tire. Most of the time they're not buying the OEM tires because they realize that another tire offers them increased performance in some way, and a lot of times the OEM tires selected, now I will say the Bridgestones that my truck came with are quite good. They are definitely tires that I would recommend to people wanting highway tires. I've never understood why tire selection or tire options are so unbelievably limited. Generally, they have a highway tire and then a, quote, off-road highway tire. The off-road highway tires are highway tires. And you have to get to something like a Tremor or the Power Wagon to go and get a more off-road suited tire. They generally, in history, have been Duratrax. That's what the Tremor comes with. That's what the Power Wagon has came with for a very long time. The Raptor was coming with, and remind me if I'm wrong, BF Goodrich's. Yeah, they were coming with BF Goodrich's for a while, and I think that they still are. Some GM has picked up on using AT3s now, or AT3s, the KO3 BF Goodrich's on some of their off-road trimmed trucks, the Trail Boss and things like that. Why is it so limited as to what tires you can order in a truck? If you're going to order a vehicle, why can't you order any tire you darn well want? There are many tires that provide the correct specifications that are necessary for the vehicle. There's no really good reason why it would be limited to one or two options, if there even are that many. So I would say to Ford, that is one area you can really distinguish yourself, is allow your vehicles to get ordered with whatever tire that people want to have. People want to buy Toyos, they want to buy Nittos and Coopers and whatever. Why not just make it from the factory instead of making people buy a very expensive vehicle with the tires they don't want on the vehicle? Why not just make that an option set to throw the tires on. I realize that may be a little bit more to worry about at the production level, but that could be changed at the dealership for the customer. They could be shipped with any old tire, and then those tires could get shipped right back to the production facility to ship out another truck with. So I'm confused why in this modern day and age you can pick everything else you want to have except for tires, and people have to go and buy a very expensive truck for themselves just to have to go out and buy a different set of tires. And a lot of people take a brand new truck and go straight to the tire store and go buy a new set of tires. That is incredibly common. If you offered that to them, that service to them at the beginning, they'd be paying for it, and your dealer would either be making money, or maybe Ford, you could position yourself to profit in that way for that too. I don't know if there's any extra politics going on here that I don't understand. If anybody has worked in the procurement and specification area at OEMs and wants to shed some light on what conversations are going on behind the scenes in terms of selecting what tires are sold on a vehicle, because it's weird. Dodge commonly sells those Nexian tires or whatever, and I kind of like on their half tons, and I kind of like to know what conversation went on in the background, who's getting kickbacks where. I'm sure that there's some politics going on here, and I'd like to know what they are, because I don't understand why commonly subpar tires are selected as the OEM tire. Is it literally just money, or is there something else going on that we're not understanding? So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I think that I've offered some different angles on a conversation that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that if you want to share any thoughts or conclusions that you have down in the comment section, I welcome and appreciate your comments. Take care, everybody, and have a great day.